This one that I'm bringing, this lady was well ahead of her time. Her name was Fanny Frances Wright. She was born in Scotland. Um, and this has been rebound very tastefully. Can you all see that pretty well?
Mhm.
Marbled paper covered
Yeah.
boards with a new leather spine and gilt stamped black leather title label. And this is the title. It looks upside down to me. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Views on society and manners in America. And this lady was like 100 and almost 200 years ahead of her time. She was a lecturer, a free thinker, a feminist, utopian socialist, abolitionist. She became a U.S. citizen in 1825. She advocated, among many things, for the emancipation of slaves, birth control, legal rights for married women, opposition to organized religion, opposition to capital punishment. A lot of her lectures led to, she was uh, riled the public so much, led to Fanny Wright societies. Now, I would love to get a broadside or
Oh,
something.
yeah. That would be fantastic.
Be fantastic. But she was a force in political and social institutions.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Rare Book Cafe, the coffee break edition. I'm Linn with the Ridge Books in Calhoun, Georgia. Joining me today, my co-host, Richard Mori. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Lee. How are you in that wonderful state of Georgia? Are you in like a peachy state of mind today?
Well, it's very warm here. It was up to nearly 80 yesterday, which
Oh
is
my God,
weird.
what are you gonna do? You didn't run a furnace last night then?
No, we're having what we call, we have those days in Georgia where you run the air conditioning and the heat same day.
Well,
We're
well, I'm
having
glad
some
to
of
be
those.
here. I'm glad to be here. I'm in the sunny state of Florida on the seventh tee, watching the golfers go by. And maybe one of these days I might get back out there when this hand is healed.
Well, we hope so. We hope so. I know this is a improvement over New Hampshire this time of year.
I think it is. I think it is.
Yeah. And we're delighted to have joining us today and an old friend of the program and of the book selling world in many ways, David Hamilton of Americana Books in Stone Mountain, Georgia. Hi, David. It's so good to see you.
Good afternoon, Lee and Richard. Nice
Good
to see you.
afternoon.
Or whatever time
Yeah,
of day it might be. We're not
yeah,
much
I've been
sure.
around this long. We're getting old.
That's true. We have.
But
Uh, as everyone knows, we've been having booksellers on to talk about what they're bringing to the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair. That's coming up. Does anyone know when that's coming up?
I think I've got it. I've been there once before. I think it's the 1st of March. Matter of fact, I think it's March 1st and 2nd. Am I correct?
I think you're right.
And it's in St. Petersburg, Florida, at the big Coliseum, the dome. No, not the dome. It's the
No, not the
Coliseum.
dome. We're not playing football.
Okay.
Be nice to get their crowds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be. It would be. And David, I know you've been going to Florida for 20 odd years now.
Since the mid 90s, yeah.
Yeah, more like 30, closer to 30
Yeah,
years.
almost 30. Yeah, I mean, a
Yeah,
couple of years will be 30, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And Richard and I've got 20 or something years under our belts by now.
Yeah, I think
But
so.
I know that you always bring interesting things. What are some of the things that you're going to share with us today and that you're planning to bring to St. Petersburg if they don't sell between now and then?
Well, funny you should mention that. I got five items that I'm going to talk about. I guess I'll go ahead and go into my first item. It's a book entitled Historical Sketch of Tomo Chichi or Tama Chichi, depending on the pronunciation. And this is a nice rebind. But the interesting thing about this book, if you can all see it, I have a little problem sometimes getting in front of the camera, is that it was the author's own copy, Charles C. Jones Jr.
Ah,
And it's got his book plate and a picture of him that somebody put in there. I suspect it was him. And I like books with associations. And this was, and another thing, he took out a picture of Tomochichi and a child.
Just turn the book a little bit, Dave. So yeah, there it is.
okay.
Thank you.
There we go. And you know, Charles C. Jones Jr. did a lot of that to his books, and I've have a few other examples. Underneath, if you can see that without me dropping it, his
Oh,
signature. So he tipped in a portrait of Tomochichi above his autograph.
oh, how nice. He's one of us, for those of us from Georgia, Jones is one of our all-time favorites to
Yeah,
collect.
the Georgia historian wrote
Yes.
over, about or over 100 publications, articles, books, pamphlets. Well-known historian. He was big on Southern Native Americans, and he wrote Southern Antiquities and stuff. And this is the title page. It was published in Albany, New York, by Joe Munsell. But what I find kind of interesting about his books that came from his library, he would do some annotations in his own
Oh,
hand. And he would write notes. And this one page here has a whole bunch of notes. And what he did is he would have his binder up in Albany. Could have been Joe Munsell. I'm not sure who would have done it, who else would have done it, but they have like blank pages for him to write on. And so this is a special copy. There are copies of historical sketch of Tomochichi available, but not the author's copy. So
oh.
I
I'm
like,
drooling over that book, David.
yeah, that's good. So Charles Jones, he was went to Princeton in 1852. He graduated at Harvard Law School in 1855. I did have a book of his one time from Princeton where he attended school. That was pretty cool. He was mayor of Savannah in 1860, and then he was an officer in the Chatham Artillery during the Civil War, and he was served in 1864 under the siege of Savannah, protecting Savannah. So he's one of the all-time historians of Georgia.
And
And
tell us who Tomachichi was.
Tomachichi, it's interesting you should ask that. According to the Wikipedia or whatever sources are online, he was born around 1644, died in 1741. He was head chief of the Yamacraw Indian tribe. It was kind of a break off of the Creek Indians. And he was, when James Oglethorpe came, their tribe was on the Yamacraw Bluff, which is present day Savannah. And so he negotiated or mediated with Oglethorpe, and their tribe went upriver, and Oglethorpe settled on the Yamacraw Bluff and called it Savannah. So he So his tribe kind of broke off from the Creek Indians, and they kind of didn't get along too well. But he was lifetime friends with James Oglethorpe, and I read something where when he died, that Oglethorpe was a pallbearer. So he was an important person in the early Georgia history. Without his cooperation, maybe the state of Georgia would have been different. Who knows?
And I believe there's a statue of him in downtown Savannah in one of
Yeah,
the
it's interesting. Yeah.
parks. Is it there?
Well, yeah, I read about that, and um, it had kind of a history where they had the original thing, and then it was demolished under unknown circumstances, and then they put up another one, and somebody renamed it. But there is somewhat of a, they did finally, Savannah finally did have one downtown. I don't know where it is. It's been years since I visited down there, but yeah, they do have one. But it was kind of interesting that they had a couple more before that and kind of disappeared,
Yeah.
as do most when you're Native
Things
American.
like that.
Yeah, back in the 1800s, it wasn't uncommon. So, but yeah, that's a really good book I'll bring down. Um, Move on to any more questions about
No,
Tomateach?
but I did want to point out the theme this year is Discover Your Treasure, and that is a treasure. Uh, uh, everybody might not appreciate it like those of us from Georgia, but that is a major find. That is a major find. I can't wait to see it in person.
Okay.
I can't afford it, you understand, but I'd like to see it.
Oh, David's always reasonably priced.
Well, I know what I could trade you for, but we won't
Yeah.
talk about that. This is the next book that can you see that okay?
Yeah.
It's very heavy and it's very, very fragile. And I have to be very careful opening it up. It's called The History of the Underground Railroad and written by the African American author William Steele. In this book, it's got gilt edges, top, bottom. The problem with this book is it's so heavy and the boards are so heavy, the hinges tend to crack and break, and the binding tends to get shaken. With, you can see the corners are bumped. You can kind of see that the binding is intact and it's not shaken. The hinges with the slightest amount of handling or poor handling could break. And that's why I'm going to probably put this in a case. I'll probably put this in a case and handle it myself because it's a pretty expensive, scarce book. And it's got the advertisements in front, which for a lot of books like that is, William Still, can you see that okay?
Yeah.
I don't want to turn the hinge too far, but that's the advertisements in front of the title page. You usually see them in the back. And it's got a very nice engraving of the author. And he was a very, very interesting man. His mother escaped slavery in Maryland with part of the family, and a couple of the others didn't, were still in slavery, and one died and one survived slavery. And but he sold this by subscription. William Still was a businessman, coal merchant, abolitionist. He was very big, and he kept meticulous records about the Underground Railroad. And it's said that he assisted or helped 649 slaves to safety through the Underground Railroad network. And this book is just full of information from that. And since he was such an integral part of that, it's a classic book, hard to find, and what more can you say about it?
There,
That's a very fancy binding for it too.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
It really is.
yeah. Is there information, Dave, about specific routes going north?
You know, it's interesting you should ask. I really haven't read it, but I'm sure there is. I've had other Underground Railroad type books. Most recently, I sold a copy of Levi Coffin Reminiscence. He was a Underground Railroad guy, and he was from my home state of Indiana, and he had an old house there where the slaves would, hide out. And then he moved to Cincinnati, where he could be closer to the action, where people could cross the river from Kentucky or Covington or whatever. And he had a network. But I haven't read it, so I can't be too specific.
Okay.
Details of the book itself. It's just, I'm
Well,
sure everything in there that he knew about is in that
I
book.
mean, as you know, many of the northern states had roots. I mean, we had examples in New Hampshire. I know there's in Vermont there were houses, in New York there's houses,
Yeah.
Massachusetts, so
There was a house in the county I used to live in Indiana, which was one of the Underground Railroad safe havens.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was they didn't have cell phones or any way of tracking or any kind of things, and it's amazing how they did it and pulled it off.
Yeah.
But so that book itself is rare as can be, and it's very historic. I mean, yeah, I bought it last year, and I'm like, doggone.
So what else have you brought for everyone to see?
Well, I brought some newspapers here, and I am bringing a lot of ephemera. So some colorful ephemera, travel type stuff, stuff to lead through, and some newspapers. And I brought this newspaper called the Florida Agriculturist,
Oh,
and 1879, 2 issues, both of them in good condition, and they share a lot of information on domestic manners, orange groves, history of settlements, several advertisements inside, um, some recipes, and so forth. Here's an article, Beautify Your Homes, editors of Florida Agriculturist. So it's about 8-page newspaper, and folded nicely. Now, the thing about these papers is that they probably weren't circulated. They fold out into one.
so that's a full elephant sheet.
Yeah. So, so it's not been cut. And the other paper is the same way. So I like it like that, because it hasn't been used that much.
Yeah.
Although you do have the other person's name on the top of the paper. So that's one of the things I'm bringing.
Where in Florida was it published?
DeLand.
Okay.
I guess DeLand is between Orlando and the beach. Isn't that right?
Basically, Daytona. It's
Yeah, between
it's
Daytona and
yeah.
there used to be a bookstore over there.
Yeah.
That
Do understand I'm not a Florida native, but I do know the geography a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, when back in the 90s, when I used to scout every southern town for books, I went through DeLand. They had a nice couple bookshops there, and
Yeah.
Daytona and Orlando.
I was in one just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, well, that's what we do.
Yeah.
We love to shop. We love to shop more than we like to catalog, but you gotta pay for your business. So you gotta get to work and cataloging. start shipping books out. This one that I'm bringing, this lady was well ahead of her time. Her name was Fanny Frances Wright. She was born in Scotland. And this has been rebound very tastefully. Can you all see that pretty well?
Mhm.
Marbled paper covered
Yeah.
boards with a new leather spine and gilt stamped black leather title label. And this is the title. It looks upside down to me. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Views on society and manners in America. And this lady was like 100 and almost 200 years ahead of her time. She was a lecturer, a free thinker, a feminist, utopian socialist, abolitionist. She became a U.S. citizen in 1825. She advocated, among many things, for the emancipation of slaves, birth control, legal rights for married women, opposition to organized religion, opposition to capital punishment. A lot of her lectures led to, she was riled the public so much, led to Fanny Wright societies. Now, I would love to get a broadside or something.
Oh, yeah. That would be fantastic.
Be fantastic. But she was a force in political and social institutions, and for
I
a
bet
late.
she was not very popular among a lot of men.
No, she wasn't, and she at the end of her life, her family was estranged from her. She was probably quite difficult at times, but because she was very, you know, set in her views. And
Do you know where she was from?
Scotland. I don't know.
Oh, Scott, but she wasn't. Oh, she didn't come to America at all.
Well, she did. She did. She
Oh,
became a
okay. I
U.S.
said, yeah, I
citizen
thought you
in
said that,
25.
but
Yeah.
okay. But I mean, in America, I was asking where was she?
I don't think I have that in my note.
Okay.
But if I had a guess, around Philadelphia, maybe, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Where was the book published? That might tell us.
Let's see, take a look at it. New York.
Yeah, I was guessing. I thought.
A series of letters from that country to a friend in England during the years 1818, 1819, and 1820s when she wrote these letters, and then they all got compiled together and put into a book form.
Wow.
So she was quite, and she's not as well known as Harriet Beecher Stowe or other folks.
Well,
but
she predates her by some
yeah,
25 years.
yeah, she set the model. She set the standard, just like William Still.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I wasn't that familiar with William Still. I had heard of the book, but I wasn't familiar with it until you start doing research. And the good thing about cataloging rare books is every day you learn something. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
that's that part I enjoy about cataloging is reading what you find and doing the research, and it's the fun part. And I just love history, and so uh, quite a lady. And I think I've gone through four, and the
I
last.
think,
Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I think you have.
And the last but not least, and this is not going to be able to be seen very well, but it's a letter, and I'm going to keep it in the plastic. I know it's glaring. Um, maybe Alan in the background can show a picture of the letter I sent him. But it's just one page, written in Long Swamp, Florida, in the summer of 1863. And it was written by, let's get his name out here. Joshua L. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. If you're Irish, I apologize. Joshua L. McGoggin, Gahhagin, McGoggin. Long Swamp, Florida, January 25th, 1863, actually in the winter. And he was a Confederate, he was a captain in the Confederacy. And he was writing about cotton prices and selling cotton, going to Gainesville and stuff like that. Not military related, but more business related during the height of the Confederacy. So he also had land in Brazil. And then after the war, he left for Brazil for a few years, like a lot of Confederates did. And but he came back and settled in Florida and died in the 1880s.
So he was someone you could actually find information on
Yes.
outside of that letter.
Yes, there's some records of Florida records, history records. I think maybe even a Wikipedia article. I'm not sure, but yeah, I did some research last night, and if I look a little blurry-eyed today, it's because I didn't get a lot of sleep.
Well, one of your primary audience for that letter probably would be our dear beloved Mike Slicker.
Well, we'll see Mike there for sure. He was my ABAA sponsor.
Was he?
Yes, back in, I guess, 2012 when I joined. He was my main sponsor. So I've known Mike, God, since the 90s. He's the one that, helped me get into the fair the first time, and I was so excited. And every time.
The first book fair I ever did was out at Gwinnett County, when we were out there, when Gavin was out there. And my booth was next to Mike and Sarah. Sarah was a college student at the time. And they helped me figure out what to do.
Yeah.
Just figure out how to be in a fair.
Yeah.
He has been so much help to so many of us over the years.
Well, he's a kingpin in the trade.
Yeah.
Great, meek person. And if you ever been through his bookshop, you know how much he loves books. So
and while we're giving him a plug, we might as well tell people that he's in Dade City, open Tuesdays through Saturday, and
right.
He's always looking forward to having people come by and say hello.
Yeah, I'd love to come down there. It's just hard to break away sometimes, but yeah, he had sold his shop near the stadium and moved out there, and he's got more space, and so
Oh, it's a nice space. Nice.
As
I tell people, if you can find the post office, you'll find Mike, because you drive right into his sign.
Oh yeah.
Well, we always talk about going to visit other people's bookstores, but then the time we have to do it, they're all somewhere else, like in Florida.
Yeah,
it's hard to go see Mike when Mike is setting up in St. Petersburg.
Yeah, it's a shop before the fair, but yeah, there's not. I don't know of many bookstores in St. Petersburg. Maybe you do, Richard, but
I don't think this really. Haslam's is closed, and there's really. Oh yeah,
wow.
they closed it during the COVID, and the last I've heard, and I talked to even Mike about this, nobody knows what's going on.
Interesting. Well,
yeah.
That's the state of bookstores. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not open. I mean, I'm just internet based, but this is my retirement from the state of Georgia. After I retire from the state of Georgia, I can do this full time. So,
I have a message from Alan that says Tombolo and Wilson's. Those must be bookstores.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
You
should have them on. You should have them on Rare Book Cafe.
I guess we should. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, David, and we'll look forward to seeing you.
Okay.
March 1st and 2nd. And he says, we will. I guess that means we will try to have them on. And Richard, I'm glad your hand is healing.
Yes.
Richard broke his hand in an argument with his van.
Richard,
Yeah.
they always win.
Recovering from that.
And the van won.
Yeah, they always win.
So, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. The Coffee Break edition of Rare Book Cafe is also sponsored by the Florida Book Fair, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone there.
And we want to remind everybody that you can find us where great podcasts are found on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and probably some other places.
Probably.
Okay.
So goodbye, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.